Okay, welcome everyone to the Pro Trade Room Plus and the API report. My name is Lee Goldstein, Trading Director for 10 Minute Trades. Please remember that all the trades we discuss are for educational purposes. It is possible to lose money trading futures, so trade carefully. Okay, everyone. Just a heads up. During the next day or so, if all of a sudden we're doing a stream and I should disappear, just hang loose and wait for me to come back. There's an issue. I'm having an issue with my computer, and I'm trying to figure out if I need a new computer or if we have this problem solved. So if it should happen, it hasn't been happening. So just a heads up, though. Don't panic. I can just reboot and come right back. So I'm trying to push the computer to make sure that it's functioning well. And that means streaming. So we've got the webcam going. We've got our charts going. We've got API going. And just let me know you can hear me just fine. You can see everything. Give me a heads up here. Okay. So whether you believe it or not, COVID is alive and well. So I've been in bed for about 4 days, up and down a little bit. Ironically, right after that horrifying Apple trade, I got so ill. I don't even remember the 2 days after that Apple trade, other than I dragged myself out of bed Thursday morning and I recorded the jobs report in SIM and the ISM report. I could not trade it. I barely could see, but I was so sorry that I didn't trade it. This was the jobs report on bonds. Our setup was safe. It's a family money trade on bonds. I'll never understand for the life of me why someone would not trade that trade when it's particularly a family money trade on bonds. No matter what, if you would have traded gold, it was the most monster gold winning trade I think we've had all year. And bonds were also fantastic. And I heard from many of you who did trade it. So do me a favor. The next time you decide to take a day off because you had a loss or because something didn't work out, don't take a family money trade as the trade you take off. Take a different trade off. All right? That would be my advice. It almost filled to the wrong side, and then it had a spectacular move because the report was very good for the Fed. Gold, I think gold was over 200 ticks. Bonds was an amazing burst. The indexes were not safe, okay? Although the ES, I heard from one of our members who made money on the ES. So I'm shocked that he made money on the ES, but he did. And I know the trader. I trust his truth, and he did well on the ES on the bonds report. Sal, how am I feeling now? I'm just a little bit tired, to be honest. I feel horrible, but not horrible. I can't explain it. Very fatigued, but often intermixed between not that bad. Right at this moment, I feel pretty good. That's the truth. So I'm definitely getting better. There's no question. The night of that Apple trade, and I had a super high fever, and I was dreaming, like I was listening to the radio, and you know how when you're not feeling well and you're watching TV or you fall asleep, the radio was in your dream. It was really bizarre. And for a couple of days, I was just in bed. And then Saturday, I started working, a lot of sleeping still. Sunday, Same thing yesterday, same thing today. Pretty much taking it easy but working. Always trying to do emails right, Bill, because I don't want people to, if you don't get emails, then I don't want people to feel abandoned. I felt well enough that I could answer emails. Sometimes I can do it in bed. It's not that bad. We're a small company, so I mean, Eric happened to be away, or he would do a lot of pitching in for me, but he was with his family, so it was just very bad timing. I didn't have anybody to help me, and we are a small company. It's the way it is. I mean, there's many reasons why I like that we're a small company, and but I've never had COVID before. I thought that I did once, but I don't think I never tested positive for it. And it's very embarrassing to have it now because it's like passe, if you know what I mean. It's not real cool to have COVID anymore. It used to be cool; you could get away with anything if you had COVID. Now people go look at you, COVID. How'd you catch COVID, you idiot? so, but anyway, so let's talk about the bond report. The ISM manufacturing, ISM services on Friday was also a very good report. Our setups were great. Last night, let's talk about last night. I wasn't answering any texts or anything last night because I just was so tired. But I did trade the Australian rate statement, which has been good to us, but it's been very inconsistent lately. It's not been an easy trade. And I traded it last night in my Top Step account. And it was a very nice trade. And again, I heard from quite a few people that traded it. And I believe everybody that traded Australia made money with our setup. If anything, maybe the bracket's a little big. We had a 13 tick bracket. I don't think I got a very good fill, and that's one of the other reasons I'm concerned about my computer. I definitely think I've got something wrong on my computer that's not right. So I'm going to probably buy a new computer later. I've just been trying to avoid it, trying to fix this one. Now it triggered a tiny bit slow, not anything out of the ordinary. This report has a history of triggering slow, and it's exactly what it did. And then it had a very nice move, and then it also has a history of reversing. So there's almost always a reversal to take if you take it quickly. Okay, on the Bank of Australia rate statement. So a couple of key things to remember. It triggers a little bit slowly, not always instant, and it often does reverse because it used to be a trap trade also. But it's still a breakout. It's still a breakout. It's more reliable. But people made money. That's the idea. We had some bad trades last week. If I'm not around, you got to keep at it. Go through the DMMs. That's why it's so important to learn to test. So you can do a little bit of back testing, if we're not here. And that's the key. You can always send me an email. Also, what do I think? What would I do? I'll happily answer, whether I'm around or not. What I want to do, I've been talking about it, I want to set up a WhatsApp group so that if people have a question last minute or something like that, shoot a question over, and if I'm on my phone and available, I could answer you. So I'm going to do that. I just got to get it going. All right, so we've got API. The history, it's used to be one of my favorite trades. These days, it's better than it used to be. It's still nothing great. I mean, that's the truth. It's not a great event. And that's the reality of it. It's not a great event. Um, it's very inconsistent. And I'll show you. When you look at the DMM, like last week, it had a small winner. It's probably going to have a winner today because it had a couple of losers. Its pattern has been that it has a couple of losers and then two or three winners, then two or three losers, two or three winners, two or three losers. That's been its pattern for a very long time, not for just a week or so. Every now and then it'll have four winners in a row. But the range trade portion of this event has been a little bit better recently. And when I say recently, I'd say over the last 2 months. So I hate losing money on a trade that trades so slowly and such a small opportunity. You can lose, almost $300 on this trade because the stop is 13 ticks, and I do not like the range trade with micros. I just don't like the way micros act this time of day for this particular trade. So if I was going to trade it, I would use the full size instrument. The targets that I would use, it's pretty rare as of late that we get our 19 tick target. Because remember, when you're trading a range trade, a bracket is created by the time of the range. Okay? So keep that in mind. That's very critical to understand. We don't call it a bracket trade. We don't call it a breakout trade. Every trade is a breakout trade, really. But if you think about it, we create a bracket anytime we create a range. The bracket is the ticks above and below the range plus the actual range itself in relation to the current price. So it's not really that hard to understand once you think about it that way, that the range is the time that you're using to create the range plus the ticks above and below. So this trade, we start the range 1629.58. It's a very short range. We end it at 1630.02. And I'm looking for 7 ticks and 14 ticks with a stop of 13. And the target one stop move, Bill, for the rest of my life, I'm going to be thinking about not catching that minor mistake you made the first time you emailed me about the target one stop move. You get it now, right? You have to have 2 positions for target one stop move to work. So Bill and I had a little bit of frustrating emailing until finally I opened my eyes and saw he was doing position size 1 was a 1, so he had 1 contract on his trade, and position size 2 he had as a 0, but he had a target 1 and he had a target 2 set, and he couldn't figure out why he was getting taken out of his trades after it hit target 1. And it's because the software never realized he had a position 2 on. Position 2, it overrides. In other words, you have to have position 2 chosen as a position for the target to be valid. That's all it was. I'm just happy we figured it out. So 1630.02 is the end of the range. 4 ticks above the range, 4 ticks below the range. Show the range graphics on chart. And we're going to call this the range trade. And I believe that this is a probability trade that's going to work today because last week we had a winner, and I think we'll get 2 in a row at least. So I'm going to give it a shot. I'll take the risk. just to get back into the swing of things. I realize it's more money than I really feel like risking on a mediocre event, but it is what it is. So 1629.58. The range ends at 1630.02. And my targets are going to be 7 and 14 with a target one stop move of break even -3. I'm going to put my charts on live. We'll check our time sync. And then remember this trade. This trade is, okay, good. Thanks everybody that's watching on YouTube. I never turned my YouTube on. I have my streaming on. So hello everybody on YouTube. I can see your chats. So anything you type in on chat, I can see. And hello, Dutchie. Okay, so we've got our range trade going to go live on the left chart. And then on my right chart, I'm just going to trade micros. Remember, this particular event is a private report for 5 minutes. The news is not available to regular people like you and me because it's sold by the API Corporation, American Petroleum Institute. They sell the data at 4:30, and it's private for 5 minutes. Then they release the data to the world, and then there's possibly a second event after that news release takes place. If there's a big build, then you can take a short. If there's a big drawdown, then you can take a long. And that's an after the news trade. I use a reversal setup for that. And all you need are, if you're using micros, then I would use a couple of positions, right? Maybe a target of 6, and maybe a second target of 15 with a stop of maybe 18 ticks using micros. All right. So just a reversal and after the news trade. And I'm just going to do this in Sim. And let me explain it again. So the concept of this trade is when you enable that after the news trade, the reversal, you get your buttons, and we'll be watching what the news result is. There's a forecast right now of a negative roughly 1.5 million, not quite 1.5 million barrel drawdown. So, and right now oil is in a, it's not like super bullish, it's not super bearish at the moment. It's pretty consolidative. If we take a longer term look at it over the past day, right? If we look at oil since 10:30 this morning, it was bullish. It pulled back to where it is now. And then if you go back yesterday, it was bearish. All right. And then it pulled back up. Oil phenomenally is below 80. And Chantal invented this after the news trade. Chantal, I'm assuming you would take a trade in either direction here today. That's my guess. I don't see why not, but if you feel like typing in, it looks to me like, just looking at the levels we're at, we're not sitting, we're sitting on the PP, central pivot. We're away from the VWAP. I would consider a secondary trade based on that news compared to the forecast. That's the idea of that second trade. The way we get the news is we will hear the news result from Financial Juice Pro, and or we will see a release. We'll see a release on the investing.com website. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to put my YouTube stream on so I can see it. Let me see if I can see it. I really enjoy streaming. I'm just struggling with OBS. OBS is a really difficult program. I was thinking maybe of getting something like StreamYard or some other interesting streaming program. I think that the opportunity for doing more interesting things without struggling so much are worth it. Sometimes if you pay for software rather than use something free, OBS is free, it works out better. You know, you get to learn something quicker and the features are better and it's easier to use. So that's what I'm thinking about. Anyway, anybody wants to chime in, chime in. I know that OBS is the standard. It's a big standard. Everyone uses it. That's why I wanted to use it. I want to become an expert at it. Chantal, I cannot hear you. Okay, you're saying you have a black screen. So does anybody else have a black screen? No, Chantal, I think it's you. John, you, oh, wait. Okay, let me redo this charts. I don't think it's anything crazy. Okay, how about now? Huh. So now, I don't think that's related to my computer problems, folks. Honestly, I think it's just sometimes the streaming just turns off. I'm not sure why. But everything should be good now. Yeah, Chantal, I couldn't hear you. All right, so we've got 7 or 8 minutes. The range trade. Last week we had so many things going on in the room. I wanted to, let's see if this video even works. We had earnings going on. I think we just barely got to the API. There's the range. The range came on. There was a burst. And it wouldn't even hit the first target. So there might even be a better opportunity today. But then eventually what happened is it did start pushing down. Very often the market does know the direction before we know. So let's see what happened here. It was short. It had hit the first target, it looks like. It did get to that first target. And then if I remember correctly, I don't think the after the news trade had a very big opportunity. It didn't generate much profit. Correct me if I'm wrong. There is a way, there has to be a way where I can also upgrade the graphic streaming on YouTube. I have a lot to learn about streaming. I have to figure it out. So we had a winning range trade last week. The week before, obviously, if you look at the DMM, we have had a couple of not profitable trades. We had a loss on the 23rd. Let's see what it did. Now, usually when this trade doesn't work, it doesn't lose. It often just is dull. And maybe you'll get filled and you get out for a $20 loss. But more often than not, it'll fill and sit exactly where you got filled for quite a few minutes. Then the news comes out, and then sometimes that news result will give you a working trade. Now, there was an opportunity, it looks like, 2 weeks ago, but it wasn't for very long, and it wasn't very big, and then it failed. Okay? So we'll see what happens. Like I said, this is not my favorite trade these days to risk money on, but it's been trading better. I mean, on these ranges, it's been hitting the first targets quite a bit, especially after two losers or a cancel and a loser. So I think there's a possibility we could just have a trade that works. The market will know. And look, if the range draws and then nothing happens, you don't have to wait around. You can just cancel it. How do you cancel a range trade? Just cancel the check mark in the enabled box if you want to get rid of it. So if it doesn't fill, you can cancel it and then wait for the news to come out and deal with that second event. So that's what we're going to do right now. Wait and see what happens. Oil, very interesting. You got to be, it's fascinating with everything that's going on in the world. And it's not a very good world these days with everything going on in the US and in the Middle East. It's just, Ukraine is forgotten, all the suffering. It's very, very sad. I wish that these wars could be over. But there are very bad actors in the world that want this. They want this chaos. They live for the chaos. And I'm not going to get political, but we need strong leaders that have beliefs. So I know what I would do. We got 1 minute and 20 seconds. So let's see if we get a burst on the range trade. So what might cause a burst? What might cause a burst is that there's a build of 5 million barrels. That would be a big, big difference from a drawdown expected of negative 1.4. That's what might cause a good reaction. Or you might get a big drawdown of 7 million barrels. That might cause a big reaction. That's why these trades work. That's the whole deal. Tomorrow we have a webinar with a company called Festival of Traders. I'm sure you've been getting emails. If you register, it would be awesome. And it's a fun webinar because it's only 30 minutes for each company. So I love those real quick present and go, present and go, present and go. No long-winded presentations. Right up my alley. That's what I like the best. Short and sweet. Get it over with. Okay, we'll get our range. All right. So it has the feeling of a trade that's going to push down because it was a decent little burst to start. Hits my first target, I'll move my stop to break even plus. In fact, I'll bring my target pretty close to the VWAP. I'll go for some cheap, easy money. Bingo. $170 on a probability. Now I wait for the next event. Why did I think today would work? Only what I said before, folks. This is a probability trade. That's how it's been working. The market knows that there's probably a build here. That's why it worked. The market knows there's probably a build. Also, to me, I don't know that we often get that much more movement out of the market than we already just got. And that's why I took my profit. I could be completely wrong. Everybody knows me. I tend to take my profits too quickly. That's what I do, but it's okay at times. This particular time, let's watch. Let's see what happens. So there could be a secondary trade. Chantal, I wish your mic worked. Maybe you could try again. Because I was going to ask you, does a move like that make you more concerned that you're not going to have profit left on that secondary trade? If I can't hear you, maybe you could just type it in. Does a move that big make you concerned that there might not be that much left for the trade after the news? I don't hear her. That's so crazy. And you guys do. Okay. Well, somebody type in what she says. It's easier for you guys to type it. No, I can't hear you, Chantal. So I'll let you know as soon as I hear the news result. I'll let you hear, but everyone else can hear you except me. It's crazy. As soon as I get the news result from Financial Juice, or if it shows up, we'll all know it. I'm very happy that worked because I've been wanting to trade the API for months and months and months. I've been waiting for the right moment. I feel like this was the right DMM moment. There is news, Dutchie. We just don't know it. That's the thing. It's released at 4:30 privately. And it's released, and the calendars scramble around trying to find out what the news is. And then it gets officially released 4:35. But it doesn't always become available at 4:35. That's truly how this works. How it works. Oh, so maybe it is a Chantal microphone problem. It's not me, maybe? Okay. So, Dutchie got 26 ticks. I didn't get quite that many. But I got about 7 on my first target. No, they won't know for another couple of minutes, Dutchie. They don't usually get the news for about 4 or 5 minutes. You could pretty much bet that it's a build. It'd be very surprising if it isn't. But we see oil do the craziest things on those Wednesday reports, don't we? So for me, I would be hesitant to take a second trade with full-size contracts, live money, after that much of a move already this time of day, because it's hard to get a lot of movement this time of day. But it could be a really big build. So let's see what happens. But my plan as I explained when I set up the trade initially, was to trade the range live and to sim the secondary trade. Chantal, isn't that the truth? It always depends on the number. It always depends on the number. All right. You know, if you think about what we do, is there anything in the world that feels better than a winning news trade? There's only a couple of things that I can really think of. It's exhilarating when you have a winning news trade. It's a fantastic feeling. It really is. It's probably what keeps us all coming back over and over and over. And John, I believe you're here. I have every intention of getting to your emails. I just need a little bit of strength to really discuss some of the things I'd like to talk to you about. It's very interesting, the guy you quoted, that Tim Reset guy. You know what he says? John sent me a really interesting email. One of the issues, one of the greatest problems in the way that we trade is you have a whole bunch of small winners and then you just get devastated by a big loser. And that is, of course, one of the greatest issues that we deal with trading these types of trades. So I'm just looking to see. I don't have anything unique to add other than at the moment. It's definitely why we're always trying to come up with different things in the software. And John, what I was going to tell you is that we have a reverse if stopped out feature in the software. And it was, I might have told you this at one time, it was designed initially for the US jobs report and bonds only. And it's never really been developed. And I've talked to the programmer for years to try and get it developed. And, you know, I've talked to the programmer about a lot of things that we never developed and then we have developed. So that's one of the features. 0 spot 509, 0.509 build, 0.509 build. Strange. So not a huge build. So a build of 500,000 barrels. So that's like a 2 million build because you add it to the draw. I add it to the draw. Is that enough to make me go short? I would not go short probably live on that. It's not a huge build, but the market definitely is looking like it wants to go down. Remember, I'm in sim, okay? And I'm on micros. If I were looking for a real push down here, I would not be greedy. I would definitely not be greedy. It's the kind of trade where I might combine my orders just into one, looking maybe for 7 ticks, something like that. It's why the combine button is a nice feature. Don't forget about brokers raising margins as you get closer to 10 minutes to 5 p.m. Eastern time. But let's let it rest. Let's see what happens here. I think probably a 10 tick stop or close to it. is probably fine. I think our stop's pretty big. Let's see if there's any push down. If there's any push down in the market, or if was it all exhausted out by our range trade. Did anybody take the range trade live with me? Anybody take the range live? So you're looking for a long with that move, but to my way of thinking, that's a build of 2 million. It's a build of 2 million. Now, you're better at this than I am, so let's see what happens. Tell us why you're looking for a long rather than a short with that number, if you could type it in. And I would rather you're right than me, because look, I'm not live, and I'm not so great at the after the dues trade on this particular one in particular. I like trading the range. So they were expecting a drawdown of 1.5 million, let's say, and there's a build. So in order to get to that build, you got to eat through that 1.5 million. So that's like a build of 2 million. That's why I'm leaning more towards a continuation. Let's say that you're in a trade room and you realize you took the wrong trade and you want to try and get out as fast as possible. What's a possible way to do that? I'm going to just talk it since this is working. All right. You could use the combine button to combine both your orders so it's easier to manipulate yourself out of a trade. Okay. It's much harder to move two orders around and stops and targets, etc. The combine button helps you to just consolidate the orders so that if you decide to move everything together, you might have a better opportunity to move things together. That's why I love the combine button. The combine button helps you get out of a trade that might not be going your way. Okay, so Chantal's thinking is it's a very small build for a move that was so big. And I get that. I do get that. Maybe we're also, though, dealing with bearish oil below 80. There's so many ways you could think about it, but yeah, I see that. So it hit my first target. So I would move my stop to break even so that even if I was wrong now, I would not have to lose. This way, at least. Keep in mind always that this time of day, there's very few orders around. It always looks like your stop is getting picked off. Okay? Hey, Dutchie, take care. Always great to see you. All right, so just going to hang out and see how this trade, what ultimately takes part. There's a couple of other numbers that do get released as part of the API report, the Cushing had a build, gasoline had a little bit of a build, the distillate had a build. Distillate, not as important this time of year. It's like winter propane. And although you think about it, distillate RVs, probably distillate use has changed over the years and become a little bit more meaningful in the warmer weather than it used to be. And then I did not notice exactly when the news appeared on investing.com, but you notice it's now on investing.com also. So now, what I would think about for me, my own personal trade, if it starts to push down a little bit again, I'll start to think about trailing my stop manually in the short direction if I get the opportunity, just to try and pick up a little bit of profit. I definitely don't think we're going to get any further than 78.15, where my target is, my second target. But if the price does head that way, you can manually trail with each tick or two of movement in that direction. Manual trailing is something that I do a lot, sometimes too often, too tightly sometimes. And then don't forget, sometimes the squeeze can help momentum better on a 30-second time frame this time of day rather than 1 minute. You might get a better signal. But look at that excellent squeeze signal on the 1 minute chart with full size. That's a really great signal. I do still like the squeeze a lot. So I'll go on a small rant. Jerry Seinfeld's new movie. That's a guy that has so much money. Everybody around him is afraid to tell him when what he's doing is horrible, right? You know, everybody knows people like that. Like, do you think the Rock, people around him tell him when he's doing something stupid? Probably not. The people with power, they're left to their own devices in some ways. Jerry Seinfeld's new movie, it's embarrassing, I think. I mean, it's insultingly bad. To me, it looks like the kind of artistic product that nobody around Seinfeld had the guts to tell him how horrible it was. And so he wound up finishing it. It is awful. Not even slightly funny. Just really pathetic. But I should also say that I'm not a Seinfeld fan. I don't think he's remotely humorous at all. But I was actually looking forward to watching it. But wow, I thought it was unwatchable. I don't know if anyone's seen it. It's a beautiful day here in Pennsylvania. 80 degrees and sunny. No gunshots fired at the moment. No ATM machines being loaded into pickup trucks at the moment. trying to figure out what's for dinner tonight. That's my biggest problem today. What's for dinner tonight? I'm getting around to that time. So, Kentucky Derby was Saturday, and one of the former Philly ball players had a horse from the 2008 World Series Phillies team, one of our favorite players, Jason Worth. And he was all over the news because he was dressed so crazy. It was so wild the way he looked. He looked like the Edge from professional wrestling. It was really funny. His horse unfortunately didn't do very well, but he was a really well-loved baseball player here when the Phillies won the World Series. 2008, Brian Howard, Chase Utley. What a great team that was. Really great team. And that would have been it. So it would have been a target one for me on that secondary trade. I would have hit my first target and probably managed my stop to try and get a little more profit, and it took me out. And you could see that there is a little bit of upward momentum now on crude as well, and it's showing up in the candle color. Okay, everybody, a successful range trade. So that's a good thing. We'll be back tomorrow. What's our first trade? I think we're 10 o'clock. Yeah, it's kind of a quiet week this week, so that's good. It's good for me. Give me a chance to get back to normal. So crude oil inventories at 10 o'clock. We'll be back at 10 o'clock for crude oil inventories. Anyone have any questions? If not, let me close the stream. And give me 1 second.